Well, here I am in the car waiting to pick up my kids from youth group, and I realized I needed to film a little introduction for my next guest, episode number 13. What's the Big Idea with Robert Nelson? Mr. Nelson is a local business owner. He provides information technology services to the local business community. And, we're just a couple of average citizens sitting around on an afternoon talking about local Walton County issues and what our opinions of those issues are and what we should do about them. That's the kind of conversation I think we all should be having. So please check out episode number 13, What's the Big Idea with Robert Nelson.
My philosophy on it is the video is really less important. It has to be clean audio. If somebody's willing to watch it, definitely are going to be listening to it.
I agree with you on the clean audio thing because I was listening to county commission meeting driving down the road today, and that's one of the things that aggravates me when I go to even on YouTube at night. I want to watch a meeting. There's a buzz or something in the background. I'm sending text to their...
It's a waste of time.
I'm sending a text to their IT guy. What are you doing? Make that stop.
Yeah.
And it gets aggravating.
Well, the August 9th meeting, I don't know if that's the one you're talking about.
The TR... Oh, you're talking about last night's meeting. Yeah, and they've got this annoying click, and I think it's when they're turning their mics off and on is about the only thing I figure it can be. But I keep hearing it go click, 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 and that bothers me.
I don't know that it should bother Anger, but it bothers me too that I want the audio to be clean. So when I take my time to tune in, I can understand what is being talked about.
It's just annoying because you sit here, think about it, how important it is for that information to get out to the public. And as you know, from a hobbyist and myself doing this as a hobby, while it does cost money for equipment, it's not overly expensive. And we spend so much money on other things that we could, we ought to be able to do it. It's just like if you go back to the last TRC meeting, they had a technical difficulty and did not record it, the audio or video available. And I'm like, well, where's your secondary source? This is so important. You should have a secondary, even though that secondary source may not be of the best quality, you still should have a secondary source.
It should at least be fantastic audio.
Yeah, we should have a great audio because these meetings are so important. I don't watch TV. I just watch county news.
I don't either. I don't watch all the county news, but I can't really pay attention to the news cycle right now. But interesting, we're talking about something, and I don't know that it's simple, but it's definitely something the county, and we'll just continue to talk about them, should get right, which is getting this information, the county business, getting it out there for people to understand crisp audio. If we look around and the county's not doing that simple thing right, is that sort of a projection into the attitude that what is the county going to do with a lot of money? What is the county going to do with a big budget? How can we, if they can't do something simple like, provide quality audio of county meetings, how can we expect people to trust them when it comes to handling millions of dollars?
Well, first, I don't think it's a matter of they can't do it. It's that they don't have the expertise they haven't hired the expertise in place. As you know, it takes some commitment more than just being on air, more than just talking. You have to also have a little, there's some of the technical stuff I don't even understand. I'm an IT guy and some of it still baffles me. I finally got my studio office set up and it was a matter of I've painted my walls green and I put the red, I got some LED red lights. I talked to a guy and he said, put your LED RGB lights behind you, put them on magenta because that's the opposite in the spectrum of the green and it'll make you pop better on the video. And all these little bitty things. And I think that they just haven't made the commitment they ought to just hire an expert to go in there and set everything up.
Right.
That's what I say, quit trying to do it yourself because it's a constant learning thing. Hire somebody, get it done right, and move on.
I didn't even introduce you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
here with Robert Nelson.
Robert Nelson.
Tell me a little bit about yourself. Where are you from?
I actually was born and raised in Pensacola, Florida. We moved to Defuniak Springs in 1979 via Gulf Breeze. I did a stint there in Gulf Breeze High School for a couple of years and then graduated at Walton High School the year 1980. But we moved over here in 79 in the automobile business. I was in the IT space as a hobby and turned it into a business.
Back in the 80s?
Yeah, back in the 80s. I touched my first one in 1978.
Wow. That's the year I was born.
Exactly. and the year you were born, me and another guy are writing a computer program to calculate R factor for insulation in houses with the understanding that if we could figure out how to do that, and there were no computer classes back then, of course, the Florida Department of Energy would give us the computers. We worked hard on that project. The teacher let us out, work on it so we could get the computer. Of course, we kept telling the teacher we were still working on it. In the background, we were working on a Star Wars game where we can fly TIE fighters down a tunnel and blow things up.
Back in the 80s, that's
Back
really
in the
cool.
80s, yeah.
Wow.
That was my first touch of one, and then it just a love and passion ever since. Yeah, I've got a business in Phoenix Springs, got an IT company, Tech Planet in Phoenix Springs, and have a love for hobby of the video stuff like we talk about, and I guess another love or hobby is local politics.
Right.
So,
that's where you and I kind of connected, just talking about some of these local political issues.
I don't think, we all need to vote. At a national level, it's so hard to make a difference. I know I don't have enough money to make a difference at a national level and very little at a state level, but there's so much you can do at a local level. I don't think people realize how important that is, because at any time, 5 county commissioners or 5 school board members can get together and 3 of them can raise our taxes. Okay, they're up. There ain't nothing we can really do about it other than vote them out, try to get somebody in next time around.
Well, you've been here for a while, since 1979, and you've seen the topography and the geography of the land change so much around here.
I've seen the people come. It is just mind-blowing, the number of people that come.
What sticks out about when you think back to the 80s, how this place looked and what it felt like? What sticks out in 30 seconds or less?
Well, the things we used to be able to do. I can't at Inlet Beach. We camp there. We would just go out, park your car on the side of the road down there. Road cuts over. There's a sign that says no driving on the beach. At least there used to be. It may be a road now. We would just park there on the shoulder of the road, get out, walk out to the beach, throw a tent up, stay there 3 or 4 days. Nobody'd say anything to you. Stretches of road from Destin to Panama City. At night, you'd hardly ever see a car. It was just nothing. Growing up from Pensacola, we also owned a cabin on the Apalachicola River in Weewaw, Hitchcock. So the weekends we would come down 98 to go over to Weewaw. And we'd stop there where the Wayside Park is. Henderson Beach, I guess, is what they call it. That'd be the stop. We'd get out. They'd make us run back and forth and everything. So we'd calm down and get back in the car, because we were getting ready to get on a stretch road. And he's like, okay, kids, there is nothing here.
Right.
So
buckle up.
Yeah. We're going. And then our next stop would be a little oyster bar called Lucy's over in Panama City. We'd stop because Dad always would stop, drink beer, eat oysters, then we'd go to Weewaw. That was the weekend ritual.
Yeah. That sounds nice.
Well, it was definitely different what the weekend ritual is now for kids, I think.
Well, you qualify as about as local as there is, such a term around here for a local.
Yes, yeah. We used to come. We actually would drive. We lived in Midway, just the other side of Navarre for a while. We'd actually drive to Grayton back when it had a little store at the park. You could go to the park. There was a store there and bathrooms and everything.
What do you think about the growth the area has seen? There seems to be 2 sides of the fence. One, lock the door, don't let anybody else in, and the other side is, hey, the inevitable is here. Well,
you can't really lock the door. It's not our play. Come on, these people buy their property. We're a victim of our own success. If people will look at why we're growing, go look in the mirror. Y'all are the ones that come, to me, I tell people, I said, y'all came down here, saw the place, loved it, went back and told your neighbors. So what did you expect?
Right.
You kept telling this is great, this is great. So more and more people come here. I know there is a movement. I don't want to really say a movement. There is a feeling that a lot of people moved down here when it was rural, bought their property. They want to try to keep it that way.
Right.
I remember in the 90s, there was still not that much here. When we put the 911 system in the county, I was working for the engineering firm that helped identify a lot of the initial structures. And I remember a real estate guy trying to sell me property across from the brickyard, $99 down, $99 a month. How many do you want? And I'd say, man, nobody is never going to want to live down here. This is just a beach thing. Of course, we all make, mistakes.
Right.
But it's people just keep coming in here. And I don't know how. We're not full. We're not nearly full. So do you think it's going to stop?
Right. Well, when you say we're not full, what is the area that you're talking about?
Well, so I was coming from Publix over here today. Look at all those lands that are marked sold there on the side of the road. Eventually, there's going to be stuff built there. Inlet Beach is exploding. My gosh, I've had to go over there a couple of times over the past 2 or 3 months. That place is absolutely
Feels full, of people. It feels like the capacity has been reached in terms of.
You're not going to reach capacity to everything's at 50 foot and 8 units per acre or per, I guess, whatever.
Well, I guess according to a spreadsheet, you're
exactly.
right.
You never, I don't know how many people that can hold. If you look at what was said at the county commission meeting last night, in the on season, we grow from a population of 85,000 to over 450,000. So,
right.
So until season is all throughout the year, we're not full.
Right. It's a lot of people. And I don't think that we have the capacity to support a population like that year round.
Well, we don't have a capacity to support that because we are rejecting efforts to create that capacity, in my opinion.
Buying housing?
Yeah. Adding, the one thing, the infrastructure we have to support those people are the people infrastructure. We don't have the workers here
That's true.
that I believe are needed to support those people. So, but the only way you're going to do that is you've got to figure out the housing issue, and I don't know what the solution is to that.
Well, I can think of a few solutions, but it seems to me everyone wants to try and fix it by stacking more housing south of the bay. And that's sort of my contention, is that south of the bay is popping at the seams. And any sort of additional density that is aimed at solving a housing issue south of the bay is just adding to the problem.
Well, that to me, when you say adding to the problem, it's adding to the problem of getting from point A to point B. So if you need more people down here, and you say, hey, we're going to build our infrastructure north of the bay, which they rejected a zoning change last night to do that. Or when I say infrastructure, I mean people and apartments. We're going to build that north of the bay. Then aren't you just creating a traffic nightmare because you got to get those people north of the bay down here to work?
Probably, but I think that you're creating that pressure either way. I mean, I don't think the savings of living a little bit closer to where you might work by living south of the bay on traffic congestion, it would be that impactful to offset the benefit of having, maybe development north of the bay. Well,
what do you do in bigger cities? Okay, there you have compact, high-density places where people live, work, and play pretty close by. I've been to bigger cities and parked my vehicle and never used it before. And you also have public transportation. So at least let's agree that the tenets of a good community, I guess, are going to be that road and reliable transportation. We also need health care of some sort. When you think about it, Walton County, the only hospital we currently have now is in Miramar Beach that's located in Walton County. So you've got to have health care. You've got to have child care. If you're going to need people to work, they got to have a way of somebody's got to take care of their children.
Right.
I mean, that's just part of it. And you got to have housing, transportation, healthcare, and childcare. So to me, those are the 4 issues that we've got to figure out a way to address in order to create a society that grows and that we all work together, because people need people. It's just like people need money. People need people that will clean their swimming pools and clean their houses and wash their cars.
Yeah, I mean, it's cliche.
There's all these different.
It takes a village.
Exactly. It takes a village. But we're rejecting things. When you try to figure a fix out, it's like we're constantly rejecting things. I mean, do we want a group of people, our workers, to all live in Geneva or not? That's in Alabama. Let's say Darlington or Gaskin. And then we got to figure out how we're going to get them down here, and we got to figure out the child care, and we got to figure out the health care.
Right. Well, I think there's a lot of space between south of the bay and Darlington. I mean, Freeport and even Defuniak Springs would be much more convenient than those areas. I think with a magic wand, I would love to circle a little area and say, okay, here's the new urbanism plan that we're going to implement here, and we're going to bring in workers, and there'll be affordable housing, and people can walk to work, and it'll be great. But south of the bay just has some unique challenges that you can't just take on a piece of paper and say, here's the plan and we're going to implement. Now, what I would love to do is trade out some tourists for year-round people that live here. I mean, there's plenty of housing in South Walton. It's just all super expensive.
I don't know. Maybe it's because I just see it all as super expensive. It's super expensive in Freeport. A 4-bedroom, 2-bath house rent for $3,500 a month.
Well, that's my whole point too. Is I spoke with Tom Baker, who is the director of housing and urban development for Walton County, and what is affordable housing? $800 a person. Well, I mean, I said $800 a person. $800 for a single mom raising a 3-year-old who's got to work full time. She can't afford to pay $1,200, $1,300, $1,400.
But that's what I was speaking to one of the candidates for state legislature about this very issue, because what's happened there is these numbers that are creating what they are calling statutorily as affordable are so skewed in Walton County.
Right.
They're coming up with affordability over in Okaloosa County. There's a project getting ready to come online over there in which I think it was 3-bedroom, 2-bath, was going to rent for $1,050 under a 60% affordable housing.
I mean, 3-bedroom, 2-bath for $1,000 sounds great.
Yeah, over here it'd be $1,300, and it's just because they look at the county by county, and $1,300 still would be great. Would be great
for a 3-bedroom.
Yeah, would still be great.
My concern again is with that single parent who's got 1 or 2 kids, who doesn't have a huge support network. Like you said, childcare. I mean, what's a person supposed to do if they've got to work 40 hours a week and they've got a child who needs, care 16 hours out of the day?
And you get in that window before they get to a certain age before they can get them in the school system.
Right.
Like that. So that's what you're trying to deal with. And I see people all the time, there's just nothing available. The whole work thing just changed overnight. Right? You figure from 2020, first of all, just statistic that just blew my mind is from 2020 to 2021, the economic activity in Walton County increased 66.4%. That is, no way could anybody plan for that.
Right.
That's sales tax and bed tax combined went up 66.4%
wow.
between 2020 and 2021. And I use those two numbers because bed tax looks at our visitors. Sales tax looks at not only where they're spending money, but where we're spending money. So, and it's leveled off and starting to decline a little bit, but it's not going back down to where it was. We're used to it growing 5 to 8% a year. It grew 66.4%.
That's crazy.
So you sit there, I was telling one of the commissioners the other day, I said, so basically, what do you think they would have said to you in 2020 if you said, hey, I think we're going to have this great growth spurt next year. I want to go ahead and 4-lane this road, 4-lane that road, and 4-lane this road. They would have thrown you out. They said, you're crazy. Go away. But it's all changed. I mean, I went over to, I've got a friend building a house in Origins, I think they call it, Prominent, someplace over there. I went and looked. She's a photographer, and her husband's a photographer. And I looked at the house, really nice house. I got a bunch of kids, or any kids more than 2's a bunch. But, it's like she's got an office and they have the bedrooms and everything. And I said, why y'all got 2 offices? Every house in here has 2 offices. Everybody works from home. It's like they came down here in 2020 because of the pandemic. We were open. Nobody else around in the area was open, but Florida was open. We were close drive, so we got all these new people down here, and they go, man, it's cheap to live here. It's new, the beaches, even housing as high as it was still cheaper. So we'll go sell our place where we're at in Georgia, take the money, come down here and build a place. And now all of a sudden we've just got.
Right. Victim of our own success is a good way to put it.
So how are we going to pay for it?
Yeah. And I mean, what does paying for it mean? The way I picture it in my head is that we've got a growth footprint, and we've got a capacity of infrastructure that is inside that growth footprint. We have grown outside of our capacity footprint. So now we need to reevaluate and come up with a long-term plan that accounts for our growth, our current status of where we are, but also the trajectory of our growth, and go ahead and make those crazy statements like, hey, we need to 4-lane this road. And I'm not talking about 30A, but some sort of heavy infrastructure project.
Almost like 4-lane in Chad Holly. I keep hearing people say 4-lane Chad Holly. I actually told one of the planning commissioners, I said, where are you hearing that from? That's the craziest thing I've ever heard of, 4-lane in Chad Holly. But I've since done some research, and it's actually in the mobility plan, the 4-lane Chad Holly.
Right.
How would you 4-lane that road anyhow? I mean,
you'd have to take land.
I can't even imagine other than you'd have to get people to take land. And this county's never been, we're just not in the eminent domain business.
Right.
And we don't buy. I talked to them one time about purchasing right away. They said, no, the problem you have is if you ever buy one bit of right away, you'll end up having to buy it all, so it'll drive your costs sky high.
When I sat down and spoke with Commissioner Gladwell, he had mentioned a study that had been done by the Transportation Committee or someone that identified $1 billion worth of infrastructure spending that needs to be done. And that's, to me, seems like a really big number. And if we identified projects that totaled up to $1 billion, I think you'd have a hard time getting enough people to agree that $1 billion budget and what you were going to spend it on. But there's a big difference between zero, doing nothing, and $1 billion. So even if you could identify $100 million worth of spending that went towards, again, expanding that infrastructure footprint that we have now outgrown with our growth footprint, what are we going to spend it on? What is a good way to spend $100 million on making this situation better?
Just to scale back just a little bit on your statement, there's $45 million worth of projects that are already permitted, sitting on the shelf. We just need the funding to fund. Of those projects, only one of them is actually north of the bay. All of them are down here. And some of them we're trying to push forward, like the signalization at 393, the signalization at Water Sound. Those are all included in that list. Mm-hmm. And they're trying, they're pushing forward, moving money around, everything, trying to get those done. But if we were to come into, say, $100 million, boom, there's a list of projects that they've already gotten to that point. They've already identified or need. And only one of them is actually north of the bay. So there's that. But I think one of the things we have to look at are cross-connector roads. If you look at, like they just recently opened 280B there in Definiak, which connects 331 to 280A, which is a road that's down in the valley. And if you come south of that, they're working on opening up East Indian Creek Ranch Road, which is another connector road from 331 down in the valley. If locals can move without having to get on those main thoroughfares, it makes everybody's life easier. Mm-hmm. Plus, it gives you access to emergency services and things like that. Because, even an ambulance, if you go during the height of season on flip day, it's hard for an ambulance to even get back and forth on 331.
Right.
So if we have places we can go, like the Nelly Drive extension, that's one of the $45 million roads that's on that list I was talking about. That takes you beside Publix all the way back to Chad Holly. So now if you're in that neighborhood, you don't have to go to 393 and get on the main Highway 98 to get to Publix, or you don't have to go down J.D. Miller or down 331. Right. You can just go right there, come out right at Publix, do what you need to do, and get back. And if you take that and you combine it with multimodal paths, mobility paths, things like that, you've got reasons that golf carts or low-speed vehicles will never have to get on the roads. And I know that's a big, and I can imagine that's a big issue. They don't ever have to get on the roads. That lets traffic keep moving for those that need to move.
So that would be your answer, that adding connector roads and more transportation thoroughfares, be it low-speed vehicles or whatever, would be the first thing that you would do if you were in control of the universe.
If I had the money. I mean, I think an awesome idea is somehow building a golf cart or low-speed vehicle multimodal loop.
Right.
That takes into account the power lines, which is on the mobility plan, even goes on the other side of 98 with under bridges, where golf carts don't ever have to touch 98. And you could get in these different neighborhoods and you could get to all these different places. Because golf carts, low-speed vehicles, they're not going away. No. I mean, they're not going to ban them. For every one we see that's bad, there's probably 10 that are doing it right.
Right. So, and I hate to be controversial about this, but I think that we need to implement low-speed vehicles in a bigger way to get traffic off of the
low-speed vehicles. Remove traffic. Low-speed vehicles are safe. I read an article the other day that somebody sent me about from, I don't know if you follow Strong Towns, which is a think tank group that works on trying to build up communities, and they talk about how much more safer congestion is than not congestion, because it forces us to move.
Interesting.
And you think about our roads in this country compared to European roads, going through our urban areas, our roads are still wide, right. 55, 65 mile an hour.
We got to fit that Escalade down there.
Exactly. But if you shrink those roads and lower those speeds.
We're all driving Nissan Cubes. I drive a Cube. I drove a Honda Element for many years. And look, you're a big guy. You can appreciate this. When a big man gets out of a little car.
But it would be cool to be in a community where you could just jump in. I mean, my father retired in Sarasota before he passed. And it was just cool to be able to jump in like an electric vehicle and run around to the little store they had, or run to the gym, or run to the community pool, or things of that nature without having to get in a car. You know, it was too far to walk.
Right.
But it was, you didn't want to deal with the parking or anything like that, because you can get a lot of low-speed vehicles in the same amount of parking spaces that you can get.
Well, however the mobility plan works out, what I hope a component of it is that I can be in Seaside and decide that I want to get down to the Red Bar in Grayton Beach and walk out to 30A and look around and find somebody who's riding a golf cart, like a taxi. You can just say,
hey, I want to jump in the back.
Yeah, I'm getting in and taking
we should get back to that. Can you imagine the community feel of that? Somebody where you could just say, hey, you going that way? And let me just hop on the back and ride with you.
Yeah, you know, something like that.
I need to throw you a couple of dollars. Here's an
or a whole business, you know, a whole business. You know,
I mean, that would be cool, especially for a tourist type economy. I mean, that would be to me, that'd be just the laid back beach vibe.
Right.
You know, you'd have these tropical done low speed vehicles just riding around and just grabbing people and getting where they need to.
I like the idea of compacting density, you know, into an area where you can get a lot done, you know, not urban sprawl, not spreading out. But I just also look around South Walton and don't feel like just adding more houses down here or apartments is really working towards that final vision. There needs to be a really sea change in how we're thinking of handling traffic congestion and the economy in South Walton if we're going to have a dramatic change in the feeling of it all.
And I'm not saying you would just go across the south end of the county building apartments or anything like that, but if you can identify, like Sandestin did, you know, they did their own housing thing. If you could identify areas like that where we've got Ascension Hospital and things like that, and you could concentrate some housing there so those people that live there can just walk to work. And to me, that keeps cars, you know, kind of keeps the cars at bay.
You know, you brought up an interesting point as to like what the sentiment would have been in back in 2009 if people were saying, hey, we're going to have all this growth, and to prepare for it, we better 4-lane this road and put this infrastructure in. People would have laughed because back in 2009, the world was coming to an end. You know, the real estate market was crashing. And I think if you put yourself back in that mind frame, you know, people were scrambling around trying to implement policies on how to keep the economy moving and incentivizing developers to come in and ask for zoning changes, increase density, and start projects, you know. So I think there's this idea that we mishandled, you know, the goose that lays the golden egg or something. And I think really you just have to go back and put yourself back in the shoes of how it felt to be coming through 2008 when the real estate market had crashed in March, and people were going from, you know, kind of the economy that we have right now to nothing in the real estate market. And
oh yeah, I remember. You know, I lost my money. So
a lot of people did.
It's like I tell people, I said, I ventured off in the real estate market 2 times in my life, and it cost me a lot every time. So I don't fool with that anymore.
Right.
Okay, let's go back even further. I moved here in 1979, 1980. That was about when this whole thing was coming to the age.
Seaside was 83 or something.
Yeah. Walton County was like the last county in the state of Florida to institute a comprehensive plan. You know, finally the state said,
do it or we're doing it.
We're doing it, and it's like we're doing it and you come along. And one of the biggest reasons they were dragging their feet is all this land that was getting put in conservation. You know, they were looking at Panama City and looking at Fort Walton, and they're like, you're limiting all of our land. It's never, you know, they couldn't grasp the concept of scarcity. They didn't grab the concept of scarcity, which we now see is much better than anything else. You make resources scarce.
Well, it's funny when they say,
and almost like an exclusivity. And
that's another good word I want to touch on. But I think scarcity is what makes this place a little different than most places. You know, land, they're not making any more of it. That's the cliche. We'll go out to Wyoming, you know, or Montana. There's land everywhere, you know. But here it's really true. You know, south of the bay, there's a little strip of land, and they're not making any more of it. In fact, some of it's probably getting washed away. You know, so there's a real scarcity issue, and I think it's okay to be exclusive in, you know, this sort of environment. I think that we as a community, as the 85,000 people that live here, who have a natural resource, much like I use this comparison. Alaska has oil under the ground. We've got tourism under the ground, and the industry that extracts that resource has an impact on the environment, and that industry should pay for that impact. But we have a huge scarcity issue that makes, our resource more valuable than if you just try to do this, in the middle of Alabama, is where I'm from. But I think it's okay to try and do more with less. And what I mean by that is we don't need more tourists showing up here. We need to figure out how to, I hate to be crude, but extract more money from the tourists that come here.
Absolutely. And to me, that's why I'm a big proponent of the sales tax referendum.
The sales tax that's coming up on the...
Yeah, I mean, they already said 65-70% of that would be paid by tourists. A couple of things people don't realize. Yes, there's a lot of housing being built here, but housing, tax money that you get off of housing is about 2 years behind the curve. By the time you buy the lot, get the CO, get it into the system, and then the bill comes due, that's on down the line. Plus those monies, a lot of that ad valorem money is allocated. It's allocated statutorily, and there's only a very small slice of it that we've got left to do anything with.
Well, that's another good point that I'd like to talk about. Walton County is a very rich county. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. We have
We're rich in assets.
We're rich in assets. But somehow or another, we don't have the money to fund these very important infrastructure projects that we know that we all agree need to happen.
Okay, you've got ad valorem is your source.
And how much is that? Like 4.5%, or let's don't guess, but it's low compared to.
It's one of the lowest millage rates in the state of Florida. So we've managed to keep that extraordinarily low. Values, because we were a rural county, the Save Our Homes Amendment and all the changes to that kind of come in play before we came of age. So the only way those values adjust themselves is people have to sell, and they have to move somewhere else, because even if they sell and move inside the county, they carry part of that with them. So we've got a lot of places in which values, like I've lived in the same house since around 1990, same place. Well, actually on the same land since 1980, but the same house since 1990. My property taxes that I pay to Walton County it's public record, but they're stupid cheap.
Right.
I mean, I give the fire department, I've got 2 structures on my house. I give the fire department $200, $100 each because of the special district in for fire protection, which I said, but fine. I mean, when I pick up the phone, I call y'all come, I give you $100.
Deal, right?
Deal, yeah, absolutely, deal. So you take that $200 out, I think my property tax is $400 a year.
$400 a year. So nothing really.
Nothing. A friend of mine lived down here. It was so funny. A friend of mine lived down here. She owns Gulfront. Down there around where Pompano Joe's is, I think is what she owned. She used to complain about the taxes all the time. Now, this was back in the 80s and 90s, but still, she's complaining all the time. And every time we resurface a road up by my place, I'd send her a thank you card. Because that's just the way it was. People up there, the values were always low, and then they got locked in, and there's just no revenue generated like you would think.
So we either have to raise property taxes or come up with some other revenue generated. Maybe everyone would just contribute if we'd send out like a mailer.
Just send a mailer.
And send us $50.
People don't even understand their taxes. I see people all the time say, when we talk about garbage, because we do have a 1% surcharge sales tax that pays for our garbage pickup in Walton County. People that move here all the time and say, well, who pays for your garbage? Oh, it's in my property taxes. No, it's not. So your garbage is paid for by your sales tax. It's been in effect for 20, 30 years. You don't even realize it.
Right.
But what's wrong with a sales tax? And if our problem is, first of all, you can't stop tourists from coming. We're past that.
Right.
The TDC does not even advertise for season anymore. All they try to do is keep our name out there for off season.
Well, let me ask you a question before I think you get to your question, and I don't want to get too personal here, but your political persuasion, are you more of a conservative thinker or more of a...
I'd like to say a more conservative thinker. At one time, I was chairman of the Republican Party in Walton County.
Well, that qualifies you as a Republican, I guess.
Well, but I've since have gone independent.
Little I, independent.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes you could vote Democrat. Most of the time you vote Republican. Okay.
I mean, that's all. But I mean, I'm not going to take it.
And I don't want to put you on the spot, but I guess my point is...
I wouldn't take it out of the realm of possibility, but so far I haven't been I haven't convinced myself to.
Right. And as a conservative thinker, though, you're okay with an additional tax in this particular case, even though traditionally.
Because I think it's fair.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a consumption tax and it's fair. And not normally do I think that, because sales taxes can be considered regressive,
right.
because the poor people would pay a greater percentage than the richer people of their money. But in Florida, we have a lot of things going for us. First of all, we don't tax food, we don't tax medicine, which they do in Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
We're not stopping you, or taxing you to prepare food. We're not taxing your medication. We also offer, what is it up to now, a half a dozen tax holidays throughout the year. So if you timed everything, if you paid attention, you could basically not pay sales tax at all. So because of the unique situation in Florida, I think it is the most fair way of collecting tax. Plus, I believe it is the only way that you can get visitors and tourists to contribute to
the impact they have
and their impact.
Yeah.
There's nothing, you can't do it through a bed tax. There's just limitations in there. The only way you can pull infrastructure money out of the bed tax money, this is my understanding, we would have to increase our marketing spend about 12% a year. And if you do just a straight line, a dollar brings this many people, that would increase our visitors about 600,000. And I don't think anybody, had 5.3 million visitors last year. I don't think anybody wants to see us bust 6 million yet. I mean, maybe one day, but I don't think that's our goal.
I mean, can I say defund the TDC? I mean,
okay, I don't have a problem with that. Let's say we're going to defund the TDC. Who's going to pay for the?
Well, I guess the proper way to say it is repurpose the TDC.
Okay, well, if they're a TDC and they're collecting if they're collecting money from tourists, there's certain things we have to do.
Well, statutorily, yeah. I understand that that's the law, but that's what I'm saying is change the statutory requirements so that the TDC can operate in a separate way.
This would be a great time to do it because the legislature's on the outs with Disney. Mm-hmm. But honestly, Disney's always been the controller of how that money's done.
The 500-pound gorilla.
Yeah, because that actually adds their they don't want to see that money come off of marketing or anything.
Well, I don't understand why we can't write laws that provide for what Disney wants to do, but also maintains this specific nature of what we've got going on in Walton County. And it goes back to what you're saying about how important county government is.
That's why I'm down here at the county level, because the state level I don't understand either. Right. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, I personally, and maybe this is radical, but would like to see an effort of county governments pulling power back, from all the way up to the federal level.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
But what we're seeing now over again is the state is getting aggravated because we're doing something they don't like. Mm-hmm. And I don't think, they don't know they don't like it. Some lobbyist convinces them they don't like it. So then they pull that power back from us. So that's something we have to be cognizant of.
Well, DeSantis is a states' rights guy. He should understand county rights. Okay. He should understand the importance of concentrating control and power to, the center of where people live.
At the local level.
Yeah. You hear that, DeSantis? Get on board.
Get on board.
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, I would like to see the money that we have available to us being used towards these solutions before we implement another tax. But I also understand that there may be a time period of trying to get access to that money where we're just sitting over here waiting for things to happen.
Well, we're running, what we're doing now is we're running county government according to what was said at the meeting last night on about $18.5 million. And out of that $18.5 million, about 6 to 8 of it's going for road maintenance and public works. If it weren't for the fact that we get the SCOP grant from the state sales tax or state gas tax fund, if it weren't for the fact that we got those, we wouldn't be doing anything in the north end. All the road work they see up there that people see happening is either legislatively sent to us specifically for that project, or it's some sort of grant that we've applied for and got that project. But you can't continue to run government on grants. I mean, you can't get any south of the Bay because the median income's so high. We're still able to get some grants north of the Bay or get the cities to apply for grants.
But you can't plan for the future based on winning grants.
Exactly. You can't just hope you can't just hope. So what's wrong with the sales tax?
Well, I'm not saying anything's wrong with it, but it goes back to my original question: is how can I think a lot of people distrust the government, and there's a whole nother conversation. What does government even mean? Am I talking about the federal government?
Yeah.
Am I talking about the county government? Am I talking about the HOA that won't let you put the fence where you want it? But my point is that I just think people have this natural response right now of saying, I don't trust the government to do anything, beyond what they're already screwing up. That's the mind frame.
Oh yeah, and I understand that, but it's that's been the mind frame for a long time. But the county says, like, if we can get this thing, here's the first thing we're going to do. Here's $45 million worth of projects, which will take, it'll take 3 or 4 years to do, and there'll be enough money come in. We're going to do that. The county last night agreed that they're going to audit these funds annually. But through an independent auditor, they're going to release, here's the money that came in, here's what we did with it, here's what it cost.
Oh, independent audit?
Independent.
Osborne will be happy to hear that.
Mr. Osborne will be happy to hear that. But absolutely. So, and they've even, the language of the initiative is not to exceed 30 years. So it's not a 30-year tax. At any point in time, they could do these 45 million. They could come up with another 100 million. At the end of 5 or 6 years, they could say, hey, really, we got this figured out now. Stop. We're not going to collect it anymore. They did that with the bridge.
I'm cautiously optimistic that something like this could happen, but I also fear that there's such this inclination to distrust the government that people are just going to throw their hands up.
Look, I get it. Okay, behind the scenes story for the bridge tax. When they were through with that, there was a couple of $1 million left over.
And just so people understand, the bridge tax was a sales tax.
It was a local option
was
sales
it a half
tax.
a percent?
I think it was a half penny.
It was a half a penny.
On the bridge, to get the bridge built, because Florida DOT said, if y'all don't do that, we're going to make it a toll bridge.
And
which I think we should have called their bluff, but still.
Was it a 10-year?
10-year program.
But they paid it off in 6 years. Yeah. And now we got us a nice 4-lane bridge.
But you could only stop that.
Not a toll bridge.
And you could only stop that on December 31st. So I think we paid it off like in January or February, but we still had to collect it for several months. And behind the scenes, there was a commissioner going, oh, I want to do this project over here. I want to do this. I mean, it was like Christmas.
Right.
And finally, I believe it was DOT stepped up and said, look, this is the way y'all did the thing. The money's got to be spent here. So we ended up with the park under the bridge and the park on the North Shore. So it has to be defined, because you do get people that look at that like
all of a sudden they want to go to Mars
like
or
Christmas
something.
Thing.
Yeah.
They're like, oh my God, I can do this, or I can do this in my neighborhood, or I can do that. So it does have to be strictly, in which it has to be on roads. So if there is money to be spent, it's got to be spent on roads.
And again, roads would be the biggest thing that you would contribute to infrastructure that would make the largest impact.
I think getting around is the biggest thing.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think when people feel the pressure of infrastructure, it's sitting in traffic and it's moving around in congestion.
Or what about when you're going down through? You're late. Like I got here super early for our meeting today. You even said, "Man, you're early." But I have been to so many meetings in which they start at 4, and I'm coming from the Funiac, and there's a traffic accident. And I'm lucky if I can roll in there at 4 o'clock. And sometimes those meetings, they need, we got to have quorums there and everything. So it causes a lot of disruption. With roads, you could take a left here, go down there a little bit, and take a right and not go around. Now, I remember you were probably 3 or 4 at the time. When before we had this bridge, it was a drawbridge at one time.
Really?
Yeah, and a barge hit it. Okay, so cut that bridge off, and there's no mid-bay bridge. How do you get to the Funiac from Santa Rosa Beach?
Wow.
You go to Panama City Beach, you go north, and you cut back over. That's what lack of infrastructure causes you. And we did that for several months. And I knew, like, police officers or deputy sheriffs that lived in the Funiac, that worked the south end.
That wasn't getting patrolled or as much.
Yeah. Well, there wasn't but 2 or 3 of them out at a time anyhow.
Right.
But still, or if you're a deputy and you're by yourself down here and you need help, all the way around they had to come. So That's why to me roads are so important. We need more ways so when something happens, we can still move traffic, because we're gone are the days where you just pull over on the side of the road and drop your tailgate and hang out.
Wait for the guy to come by and help you. Although that did happen to me not too long ago.
Or hang out for 3 or 4 hours
for one person to come by.
While they try to get that cleared, and hopefully you'll see somebody.
Well, listen, I appreciate you coming in and having a conversation with me about this stuff, and I hope that you'll come back and we can talk about this some more.
We've got to. I mean, we're putting together, or I'm actually heading a group of people. We're trying to put together the Vote Yes for Roads.
Okay,
that's going to be our thing. We've got to have roads, so we want to get the.
Where can you get more information on that effort?
That will be coming soon.
Okay, well, come back and talk to me about that.
Yeah, we're trying to get it all. We just opened the bank account and started the PAC yesterday, so we're trying to get everything kind of in the flow. I didn't want to do anything. We've got a property tax shift amendment or a resolution that's on the August ballot. And when I was first approached about working on this, I said, I don't want to do anything till after that, because people get confused about, I don't want them to think they're voting against something that they should really be supporting.
Gotcha.
So we'll roll all that out right after the primary.
Well, thank you for your time. And that's a great effort. I appreciate you sitting down and talking to me about it.
Absolutely. Anytime. I'll talk to anybody about anything for just about any length of time.
There you go.
That's why my wife won't take me to Walmart.
Is that the only reason?
But I think that's the only reason. At least I like to believe it.
Yeah. All right. Well, till next time, man. Thank you for your time.
Yes, sir.
All right, cool.